Okay, so Bill, welcome back to the Photographic Life for another episode of the conversation.
I stand ready, Grant. Let's do this thing.
Well, this may go on a while. You may want to take a seat at some point. Now, listen, here's the thing. I get so many people thinking that you and I know each other and have known each other for years and have worked together for years, and they can never believe that we met on social media.
It's true.
It is true.
And we've never met in real life.
No, no, it's the success of our relationship. Now, we're responding this week to a listener who contacted me, as so many do. Thank you, everybody who does do that, because we do get a lot of amazing responses, as Bill knows, because we share those responses out. Um, and they were asking me whether or not we would talk about social media and photography. And I thought, well, that seems like a good idea because in all these episodes, we've never discussed the thing that you and I probably get involved with the most.
Yeah, and what I think is interesting is we have, I think, different predilections to the social media platforms that we gravitate to. I mean, we have such similar tastes, I think, mostly when it comes to pictures and when it comes to talking about photography. In fact, we don't argue enough, probably. But we do really split when it comes to the social media that we like and that we use.
Well, you're setting up an argument, aren't you? I like that.
Well, I am spicy.
In a world full of torment, why not continue it on the podcast?
Exactly.
Okay, so where do you want to start with this?
Well, I don't know. You brought it up. Why don't you? I don't know if you want to go. Why social media is or isn't important to photographers, how they use it or should use it, or platform by platform, or up to you.
There's so many ways, aren't there? Well, okay, I'm going to start at the very beginning, which is this. And apologies to any of my students who may have stumbled across this podcast, because I'm going to say what I say to all the students when I lecture on this subject, which I do. And I'm not going to make it seem academic or lectury, I hope. But here's the thing. My take is this. On social media, you have to be a social being. And that may sound very strange, but I don't think a lot of people who are dismissive of it or who use it poorly really understand that basic fact that without us, all it is an algorithm. And to be honest, if we all just pulled off of every social media platform, social media would no longer exist.
That's right, because we make it. Our contributions, whether they are pictures that we post or comments that we post or whatever it is, it is nothing without us. And I think uh, I don't know where you're going with that, intro, but I often see complaints by photographers um, saying that I'm not getting engagement. Um, I post this thing and I get two comments and four likes. So to that, I really have to ask, how engaged are you? How often are you responding to other people's pictures? And it is really one of those things where you, to a certain degree, you get what you give. Um, and I have never been one to read anything about how to increase your followership. Like I mean, I am the least technical person, about this, and I actually don't care that much. Um, so, but I am a social person, and so I do engage. I do comment, positive and negative on other people's photographs, usually positive. Um, and that comes back to you.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the key to it is that expectation of you have to actually put some work into it. So here's the thing, but also I think it's about the tone of language. And you and I have never read any of those articles because we are intrinsically old school publishing and social media is publishing. That's really what it is. And I always use this little kind of scenario. Imagine you were at a party, Bill, and you're looking to buy a secondhand car. And a guy comes up to you and he starts chatting, and you find out that he's a used car dealer. And he's really hardcore selling that car. And he's saying, come and see me, come and see me. I can do a deal. I can do. What are you going to do? You're immediately going to run for the hills.
I'm gonna go get another drink. Thank you very much.
Exactly. Now, imagine, if you will, that you're at the same party and you're still looking for a car. Imagine someone else. Can you believe it? There are two used car dealers at the same party. You've obviously gone to the wrong party. The second guy comes over and he says, "Oh, how are you?" And he's interested in you as a person. And you say, "Yeah." And you say, "What do you do?" And he says, "I sell cars." He said, "But I can help you out, but it's up to you." And he's just really nice about it. And it's just a really easy kind of thing. And you swap cards. You're instantly going to respond positively to that person.
I mean, I would even say, just to push that metaphor a little bit more, that you start talking about why you love cars and which cars you love and which cars you don't, and why blue is better than red, and this model is that model. And it's that exchange of actual information and opinion without any kind of explicit transfer of of money or anything else, that I think is what actually fuels good social media response.
Exactly. That person is speaking with you, they're not speaking at you.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key to social media is don't think you can just put things up and just expect people to come at you. But at the same time, I think it shows a bit of a misunderstanding of all social media platforms if you think that they're only there for marketing purposes. And I think a lot of photographers reject social media. And I come across it still. It's like, yeah, that's not for me. No, I don't do that because it's like, that's kind of cheapening the whole
You
thing.
know, it's funny. I work with photographers, helping them make their books, and I worked with a publisher recently. This book got published, and it's a very well-known book publisher, and the guy who the top dog there, no, social media. I don't care about that. I'm old school. I'm old school, and it was a very strict orthodoxy that he held, and it's high-minded and fantastic, and it's moronic because there are very few bookstores these days that sell photo books, and the way photo books get sold is largely online and over social media. And so to ignore that makes no sense whatsoever, and it's just a high-minded, ludicrous position to take. At the same time, to go out there and if every post you make is buy my book, see my video, look at my film, buy the T-shirt, nobody wants that. And so, you know, by giving true, and I hate this word, content, by putting something of value out there for people to enjoy or learn from or hate and criticize, um, you're adding to the ecosystem as opposed to just being a neon billboard selling something for $3.99.
Yeah, because otherwise you're just the used car salesman. But I think that the really key thing is to be yourself on social media.
And I think the other thing is to be interested. And if you're not interested,
And interesting.
and interesting, and if you're not, don't bother. Truly, spend your time somewhere else because there are other things you can do for your soul. My God, yes, we can talk about that later, but also for your business, whatever it is, that if you're not truly interested in being social, don't bother. Better that than to drive yourself nuts, or feel all sorts of hates inside. When I am interested in what people think, and when I was the editor of Life, we would get tons of letters back then. It was mostly letters to the editor, and I would read them all, and I would respond to as many as I could, because for every person who sits down and puts pen to paper and sends it to the editor, there's probably 1,000 people with the same opinion. And if you're not interested in that, um, I don't really understand sort of what you're doing online.
No, but also I think you have to be interested in people. And as a
100%.
and as a photographer, I'm interested in people. It always it raises some eyebrows when I say I'm really not. I had to give a talk the other week to a whole load of people, and I said, look, I'm really not interested in photography, and I'm really not interested in photographers. And of course, there was shock, horror. And I was like, I'm interested in people, and I'm interested in stories, and I'm interested in visuals, but we don't have to confine it. And I think that one of the things that, I started off saying we met on social media, and I've met so many people, and I know so many people on social media who I have never met. Although occasionally they do come up to me because they recognize my voice if I'm out and they'll go, "Oh, you're Grant, aren't you?" I'm like, "Yeah, but who are you?" Restraining order immediately
Right.
is a requirement. But that sense of community. So I just thought it's a good place to start off with that idea of us sort of suggesting how you need to be on social media. And also, it's not a place of judgment. People seem to be so afraid of, um, or kind of that anxiety of putting something out there in case they're going to be judged.
Yeah, I guess I don't understand what the hang up is about being judged, because if you're going to put your photographs on a wall or in a book or in a zine, people will have their opinions. And you know what? Agree or disagree, who cares? It's your thing, and if there's feedback that you can take from it, fantastic. But mostly, it's a great opportunity to learn.
So, do we have to be, as photographers, engaged with at least one social media platform? What do you think?
I think you do,
Yeah.
and here's why, and I'll tell you which one I think it is. Um, you do, unless you're a very special sort of obscure, photographing very obscure things like only for yourself. It does give you a sense of what is happening in the marketplace. Um, and I don't necessarily mean marketplace in terms of dollar and cents. I mean in terms of what people are paying attention to, what the trends are, so you can follow them or avoid them, um, who the personalities are and why. And I think if you're not engaged in that, you really are missing um, a large part of the practice. It's not going to make you probably a better or worse photographer, but I do think it keeps you somewhat in tune with um, what's going on a day-to-day, month-to-month, year-to-year basis.
I'm going to argue with you. I think it
Yeah.
can make you a better or a worse photographer.
Tell me.
Well, I think I do see a lot of work, and okay, let's put it out there. I think you're going to recommend Instagram as the platform you should be on as a photographer.
Without question.
Okay, good. So here's the good and the bad of Instagram. Sure, you get to see a lot of work and what have you. The bad is that there's a lot of work out there on Instagram that's being created specifically for Instagram as kind of one hit images to try and get likes. And a lot of that work does get likes because it's appealing to a kind of a broad, shall we say, audience. The worst thing that a photographer can do is try and replicate that work.
Well,
So
but
that's
that
how it,
that's not Instagram's fault.
no, absolutely not. It's the photographer's fault. But
Well,
it
that's right. I mean, you can read a terrible how-to book, follow that advice because you're a moron, and take terrible pictures. So, to look
but
at
Bill,
Instagram.
the thing is though, I think with Instagram is that it's a very kind of strong mistress that's going to call you in there because I think people are influenced by the likes and the follower numbers, which you wouldn't get in a kind of a how-to manual book.
Well, yes, in that feedback people thrive on feedback. We're used to getting grades from the time we're, in school as a 6-year-old. And from our parents, so that feedback can matter. But if I'm a photographer and I see other photographers taking pictures of somebody walking on a rainy street with a red umbrella that gets, 1,000 likes, and if it's that important to you to get 1,000 likes, um, that's the problem. Instagram's not the problem. I mean, if you don't have your own filter to say, great, that person has a lot of likes. I mean, look, there's a lot of politicians in my country that say lots and lots of terrible things, the worst things. And for a moment, they will be popular. Um, I don't seek that kind of popularity. There's a few people I know who don't. It would be easy to get it. All you have to say is, I hate this and I hate that. Why do it?
Okay, so we're putting the pressure on the photographer to try and
To
look at
be a
the
grown
work.
up. To be a
Yes,
grown up.
okay, to be a social being, to be kind of grown up about
Yeah,
this.
I mean, I do want to say if you're a teenager and you're and you see all your friends have likes and being social is that important and being liked and being invited, okay, I get it. If you actually have a practice and sure you want to get your stuff seen, you'd like to get it liked, but don't change your practice to chase likes. That's on you.
Okay, so here's another thing. The algorithm. The more of the kind of work you look at, it's going to feed you that work. And it could prevent you. Again, okay, I accept the fact it's on the photographer. However, it
Absolutely.
could prevent you from seeing work outside of what the work you're already looking at.
Okay. That's a great point. But again, that's on the photographer. So on Instagram, let's just focus on Instagram for the moment. Um, there is a discover page essentially, and it's based on mostly probably some demographic stuff, but it's based on what you've looked at. Um, you can choose, but not exactly. So it's not all, if you've once clicked on pandas, it's you're not only going to get pandas. You can change what you get fed based on what you click on. And so and I do want to, in preparation for this episode, and I've done very, very little, I did do something that I want to share with people who are listening. And we can post this on the show notes. But you can go into your system preferences and you can I'm gonna consult my notes right here because you can you can go to your system preference content preferences, um, click on content preferences, and then you'll see snooze suggested posts, right? So you can click that and that will clean up your feed immediately. And then here's the trick, you can press reset suggested content. So I did this 2 days ago, and I used to get lots of stuff sent to me. Um, for a while, you and I were talking about AI photography, and so I was looking into that. So I started getting lots of A. I will admit this on your show for the first time in public. I once clicked on a baby panda um, video, and so I got tons of. Anyway, this reset that, and now all I'm getting is photography.
Okay, but what do you call photography?
Okay. The kind of photography, let me rephrase that. Now, what I'm getting is more or less, they're suggesting a lot of things to me. I'm getting the photography that I like, which is more traditional, more documentary based, probably skewing a bit towards black and white. But it's quote unquote, and again, this is totally my opinion, old school, real photography and photojournalism. And I'm not clicking on those things it's suggesting to me that I'm being very careful now what I click on because I realize, which I didn't in 2014, when I started on Instagram 10 years ago, I'm conscious of how I'm training the algorithm
Do you think you're training the algorithm by what you post?
by what I post.
Yeah.
I believe I do. I
Yeah.
mean, I have no real sense, but I post what I like. Um,
Because there's a prevalence there of black and white documentary photography. And when you
yeah.
say about that reset, I'm thinking, okay, fine, where is it going for that reset? So
Well, but it
if
also made going to the people who I intentionally follow. And a lot of the people that I follow are not AI photographers.
okay, so that's good. We're good with that. Here's another problem with Instagram. I'm just playing devil's advocate, you know.
I'm bring it on. I don't, I just want to, before you say
Mm,
what you're going to say,
mm,
um, it's not like I don't think Instagram doesn't have major problems.
yeah.
I also think the New York Times has major problems, and yet rely on it. So I am not an apologist for Instagram,
No,
but
but I think as a central photographic platform, I have an issue in that I actually kind of agree with you. You know, I don't disagree with you at all. However, I do see things that come out of it, which I do feel are detrimental to people's evolution with their work. And I think that if you are only living on Instagram, you will get a very skewed idea of what photography is. So I'm agreeing with you completely. Yes, you absolutely, as a photographer, should be on Instagram. Yes, you should be aware that it is, in essence, a marketing tool. And you should, you know, if you want to use it as for pictures of the family and partying, that's fine. But be aware that you're publishing that to the world. And going back to that idea that we bring publishing experience when we're putting stuff up, we're actually curating our social media platforms quite tightly. And if you're going to want people to look at that work and maybe commission you or see that work or, you know, share that work, you've also got to be aware of what you're posting all of the time.
Um, I will share with you after after we wrap up here, the link to a story that I wrote about how photo directors and art directors, creative directors use Instagram and what they look for when they're looking for photographers and what's a like and what's a not like, what's a turn off. And it's very instructive because they look at Instagram, at photographers' Instagram feeds with a very focused way of looking at things. And when they
Yeah,
see things that don't work for them, they go to the next person.
we'll put that in the show notes. But interestingly, Fiona Hayes, who joins us, as you know,
Yes.
is absolutely kind of on Instagram as a central tool for any photographer, and she is quite evangelical about it. So I am slightly in the weeds on this one.
Well, I am too, and that's because, in the old days, and I think we've talked about this, photographers were able to go into a magazine's or whatever's office, drop off their portfolio, and pick it up next Thursday, maybe with some feedback. That does not happen anymore. The way what photo editors do when they're waiting at line in the bank or at the supermarket is they're casually looking through Instagram. To sort of get a first hit on different styles and photographers. So you have to be very clear. If you are using it as a marketing tool to some degree or a showcase, you have to be clear and consistent about the message that you're sending when you post things.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. And I think in essence, for me, Instagram is a marketing tool and it's a visual library. That's really kind of what it is.
well, for me, it's a visual library. I mean, I can't tell you. So I'm not a photographer. I take pictures. I'm not a photographer, but it has enlarged my knowledge of photography. I can't even, I mean, probably 100-fold because nothing could be easier than, looking, for example, who a photographer that I love, say Raul Canabano from Cuba, looking at who he follows,
Okay. And
right?
that's the key
And
is
that's the
following the
key.
people that you like follow.
That's right. And then when I see who Raul follows, and then I see who those people follow, I have found five new photographers that I've never heard of that maybe I'm crazy about. And, every week, as you know, or most weeks, most Fridays, I post something called Meet This Photographer. And many of those photographers are under the radar, and I have found them by going down those rabbit holes. And it's a joy to find them, and it's a real joy to share their work.
And that is the advice I give everybody because they say, oh, whatever social media platform, but how do I find people? What do I do? I don't know what to do. And I think it's the same on every social media platform. You go on there, you set yourself up, and you don't give yourself a silly name. You don't try and be like kind of write but put a bad kind of picture you think is funny. You don't put a comedy description of who you are. You're just very straight, very professional, and you then look for the people who you like, and you follow who they follow, and you follow who they follow, and therefore very quickly you can build up that resource of people to follow, and then they start coming into your feed, and then you should then start interacting with them in a
Well, that's
really
right.
nice way.
Yeah. And you know what? You're allowed to ask questions. If you see a photograph that you love taken by a photographer that you love, ask a question, not an antagonistic question, why didn't you include this person or that person? But ask a real question. Um, and you'll likely get an answer, and you also likely might get, if you care about this, people to follow you, because people tend to, if the question is smart and it's a real question, people might be interested in finding out who you are. I do that all the time.
Well, it's the party metaphor yet again. My thing at the beginning there, it
Right.
does hold true all of the way through. And I don't think there's anything wrong with, if you see a picture you like, just say, love this. This is
Love
great.
it.
Who doesn't
Who
love
doesn't
getting
like
a
that?
compliment? Yeah,
Yeah.
compliments are great. There's
Yeah.
nothing to hate there. Okay.
And
So,
also, I do want to say, if people do make comments on your photos, respond.
always.
And I typically respond like this. If somebody puts an emoji on a comment of something that I've done, I will put an emoji back. Um, I will not respond with two paragraphs. If somebody asks a question or makes a real comment, I will try to respond, um, more or less at that length, probably shorter, but I will respond in the same manner to which they engaged with me.
Absolutely. Although I have to say, I do get criticized sometimes for my one word responses and my slightly haiku approach. But I am really busy. But so I try and respond to everything as quick, but I will always make a response of some kind. Okay. So listen, you and I met on Twitter, which of course is no longer.
And I'm not on it anymore. I gave it up when Elon Musk started showing his true colors.
Yeah, me too. And I walked away from 30,000 followers on Twitter because it wasn't, the followership to me wasn't worth it.
Right.
And you and I bounced around for a while through different kind of platforms. What did you go to after Twitter, and what was your experience?
I went to, okay, so I tried to use, I think it was Mastodon. It was a little too hard for me. Um, just because I'm not, like I said a few minutes ago, I just can't do it. It's too technical. And then I moved to Threads, which was easy because some of my Instagram contacts, followers transferred over there. I found it to be clean, simple to use because they essentially stole it from Twitter. Um, um, I like it. I like it. I like the fact that it's newsy. There are things I don't like about it, but I find it a fairly positive, so far positive place. And I like that you can see a bunch of photos there, not just, three or two or three.
Mm. Okay, so I went to Vero, to Mastodon,
Oh,
to
I did
Thread,
Vero as well.
and I'm on Substack and TikTok. I'm on absolutely everything as UN of photo. Um, I found Threads was fine, but it was a little quiet and there was very little interaction going on for me. So I moved over onto Blue Sky. which I have to say is a little bit quieter now than it was a few weeks ago. A few weeks ago,
Agreed.
it got busy, and I was like, okay, this is good. Um, but it's still the closest, nicest experience I have. And for me, and I think it's important to understand with social media, is that in essence, you can use it in two ways. You can use it as a communication tool, a two-way conversation type thing, but you can also use it as a director of traffic, in that you can use it to push people to other areas. And
Mhm.
invariably, that's for me, it's the podcast, it's our YouTube channel, and it's also our website. And I don't think enough photographers use their websites enough. They're not energetic enough. They're just kind of, here's some pictures and I forget about it. Well, it's a fantastic way of directing traffic to somewhere else that you might be doing something. So I think that idea of social media networking is also really important.
I like Blue Sky okay. I was excited when I first got on because it sort of matched with the tone of exchange that I like, which is not screaming at people. And I mean, I'm happy to scream at people. I just don't want to be screamed at back. Um, but now I do feel it's a little quiet. Like there's a photo influencer, I won't name the person's name, who every time a new platform it comes out, um, this person announces on Instagram, um, I'm going to Threads, I'm going to Blue Sky, I'm going to Photo. And it's like, but you're telling us this on Instagram. So, like, where are you really? And I do think we have to be careful about chasing, just for our own sanity, chasing every new platform that pops up because it could possibly be the next big thing. I think it's anxiety making, to be
Yeah.
honest.
I mean, I know who that person is that you're referring to.
Yeah, and it's fine, and
Yeah.
whatever, and we have different takes on what's important in photography content, put it that way.
Yeah, but I think also there is a difference in, I don't think you should do anything unless you know why you're doing it, unless you've got some kind of logic.
Right, it's
And
like move to something, not necessarily just away from something.
yeah, and I don't think it's a thing in itself. I think that's the really key thing. You can't just exist on social media and become a social media star in that way. You really need, as I say, I see it as a place to meet people. I think Blue Sky for me is great to hear about exhibitions, read articles. So for me, it's a library, it's a reference point. Stuff is coming into my pocket that I wouldn't ordinarily know about. Occasionally, I might think, do you know what? I'm going to say something political, or I'm going to say something to do with music, or I'm going to say how I feel this afternoon. And I think that's okay as long as you understand how and why you're doing it.
Well, so a couple things. I started on Blue Sky, mostly kind of replicating what I do on Instagram, which is photography. Here's an interesting photo you might not have seen. Here's a photographer you might not have heard of. And then, as things rapidly went downhill in my country, politically, I started spouting my political views, and I get almost no interaction on that stuff. It's very clear to me that nobody is following me to to hear my political views about anything. And
Yeah,
guess
but
what?
I think that's okay though. I don't get any.
I don't care.
No, I don't either. But I think what it does, and the reason I do it, and I always do it very carefully, but a lot of it has been because of what's going on in your country at the minute as well. Is I think it gives, for me, it's part of who I am, and
Exactly.
therefore, if I'm being who I am online and being true to myself, I'm going to point out to this, and actually, if you don't like it, that's fine, because I
Yeah,
always
you know
say
what?
it's not just photography.
If you're a Nazi who's following me, I would rather have you not follow me. Like
Yeah, exactly.
I do not want Nazi likes. Um, and I don't want MAGA likes, and I don't want Musk likes. I don't care. Um, My problem with Blue Sky is something that I think they will probably address down the road, which is you can only post, I believe, 4 photographs. Um, so I don't like how they treat and how they under prioritize visual imagery. I think it hampers the ability to tell a photo story, and
But I agree with you on that. But is that a problem? I mean, the bigger issue, I suppose, is with all of this is that, if we go back 15 odd years to the beginning of Twitter, it was, excuse me, it was this amazing new thing that we couldn't quite believe. And now, 15 years later, I think we've reached saturation point. And I do understand why people feel they can't go on with it. But it's a bit like the days of newspapers. You don't need 6 newspapers a day. You'll choose the one that works for you.
that's
Uh,
right.
and that's that. And it's the same thing. I mean, we haven't yet spoken about YouTube, which I also think is very interesting at the minute. Yeah, we
Yeah,
are. Sorry, go on.
well, just like I go to, for the most part, Instagram for visual stimulus and education and entertainment. And I go on Threads or Blue Sky, mostly Threads at this point, for news and for ideally insightful takes on the news. Um, there is. We do want to talk about YouTube, which you know far more about than I do. And I think we also want to talk about Photo, Photo, which is a brand new app. I think it launched 3 days ago, which is explicitly for photographers. Um, there's not a lot of political hot takes on that, so we can talk about that as well.
We'll talk about photo now, and then let's move on to YouTube because I know you've spoken to somebody there, haven't you?
Yeah, I think I have a small journalistic coup for you. I hate to use the word coup these days, but a small journalistic coup for you because I spoke with Michael Howard over email, interviewed him, who's the founder and CEO of the photo app Photo, and I think it was the first interview he did. After they officially launched in the Google and Apple Store. So it's a pretty short interview, and I had a couple questions for him, but because it's a new app and it is visually based. And it's been in beta for a while, and I've been on that. So I asked him when did you start work on photo, and he said I had the first designs done for a few screens of photo in 2021, and then I let it sit for a year and picked it back up in August 2022, and have been working on it ever since. And he works hard on it. I asked him if he's a photographer. He said, I used to be a photographer. I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts, a degree in photography. I photographed weddings, fashion, editorial, commercial work. In 2015, I started a fine art print lab. Needless to say, I don't have much time to create personal work anymore. Hopefully, that will change in the future. I asked him why photographers need yet another app, and he wrote this. I think we're in a unique time where people are open to leaving meta products, and there hasn't been an app that's caught on well enough to have long-term staying power. We hope we can break through this barrier. It's going to be a challenge. Social media has gotten to a bizarre place in the last 5 years. It's now full of ads, suggested posts, videos, and data mining. Those issues don't even address mental health and attention harvesting that companies like Meta thrive on. I believe people are ready for a place dedicated to the power of images and community. I asked him what is photo's unique selling proposition? What will make it different from Instagram? He wrote, beside the points above, which I just read, photo has been built up to this point by the community around it. We have not taken VC money and are a small team of 3 people plus a metadata search tech advisor. Almost all the other alternatives have taken venture capital money, including Blue Sky, which means they will need to monetize somehow, and they haven't stated how they will do that. Photo will always have a high quality free tier, but we will monetize through pro features like portfolios, shop, and a paid subscriber area. We dislike the ad-based model because it turns all users into data and attention harvesting products. It leads to bad incentive structures that we want to avoid. Finally, I asked him this question, Grant, which is sort of where we began. Why is social media important for photographers? And he said, people will always want to connect with other humans in a meaningful way, but social media doesn't help with that anymore. We want to turn to that. We want to return to that by creating a place where people can learn about the world and build empathy through photography.
Well, I think that sounds fantastic. And I've been following it all the way through as well, although I haven't dived in because I just don't have the bandwidth for another thing, to be honest with
Yep.
you.
Yep.
I think the key to the success is two things, and I hate to always be cynical, but there you go. It's one of us has to be. Um, is that it will be as reliant on the people who engage with it. And if the people who engage with it have the work and the intentions that the founders have, then that would be great.
Right.
Let's wait and see. But wish them all the best of luck and well done on your scoop.
Yes, and we will put the link to download photo in the show notes as well.
Yeah, great. And maybe they'll want to sponsor a podcast in the future. Who knows?
They have one. It's been a little dormant, but who knows?
Oh, you only want to go with the best.
Yes, it's true.
That's for sure. Okay, well, that's interesting. So that's the what we consider to be the traditional photo social media. But YouTube, I think, is interesting. YouTube is has got a phenomenal algorithm. There's obviously a huge amount of photographers on there doing all sorts of photographic things. Although my research into it is very much that it's kind of camera reviews, is that kind of traditional kind of two guys and a coffee, and we're gonna trash a camera. There seems to be a huge amount of street. Yeah, exactly. Well, it's the afternoon here, so I could have something stronger, especially with excuse me, I must apologize actually to listeners for my throat this week because I've had a bad cold. That's why I don't usually sound this deep. But anyway, a lot of street photographers on there, so people wandering around doing that. And a lot of people telling me how to make money with photography, which I have watched some of those, and I
How
can
you doing?
well, I can happily tell you I'm following none of the advice that I'm
Excellent.
seeing there because I've never seen so much snake oil being sold. However, what is great, of course, is there are also a lot of photographers being interviewed from where talks they've given or at exhibitions or at book openings or associated with books. Um, and they've given interviews there, and it's really great. Alex Soth does a fantastic kind of series of little films. Mac Books do something as well, although it does seem to be very difficult for those guys to maintain a consistency of output, which is always the problem, even with
But
this podcast.
understandable. It's it is understandable.
Yeah, it's tough putting out an episode every week. I can attest to that. But also friend of the podcast who spoke about YouTube on here a couple of weeks ago, which I really recommend that episode. Harry Borden is doing something really interesting and different with it. And talking to Harry, what I find interesting is that not only is there potential revenue out of this, which there definitely is, but for those of us who enjoy meeting people, particularly people that we are inspired by or we're interested in, and we want to go and photograph them, what Harry's doing is going out and making little YouTube films about journalists and writers and just people he respects. So, in a sense, that's old school commissioning that he's
Uh-huh.
now getting paid for.
I mean, that's great. I personally have never quite clicked into YouTube, and I think it's mostly because I spent, as a writer, I spend so much time on the computer that for me to sort of at the end of the day relax or take a break, it's the last thing I want to do. So that's a very personal thing. I have been certainly turned off by all of the focus on gear. The gear obsession, which I find so much on YouTube, is a turnoff for me. Um, but it has been gratifying. I have. as part of the Leica conversations, which is when Leica has somebody interview their photographers, and I do that for them a few times a year. It's been really gratifying to see 40,000 people have watched this hour-long video with interview with Ralph Gibson or whoever, and
Yeah,
that's kind of nice.
that reach is incredible. And I
Yeah,
think it's something I wouldn't recommend that photographers have to be on it by any means, but I don't think it should be dispelled anymore. And just as we're talking about the death of traditional print media and its replacement with podcasts and YouTube, actually, I think we're also seeing a death of traditional television. For you guys, cable TV, and for us, traditional channels. And people are going on YouTube
right.
rather than on television. So we're talking about a media change
100%.
across the board, and therefore, as people involved in the media, we should be involved with them.
Yep, we should. And I'm sort of castigating myself now and feeling guilty for not spending more time on YouTube. So thank you.
I don't want to drag you away from whatever else you do to the screen again, Bill. That's for sure. Okay, well, I think we've given some good advice.
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to you will get out of it probably a little less than you put into it. Um, just because that's, almost the way it works with everything. You work so hard on whatever it is you do, and you might not get paid exactly what you think you earn, but I think you do get a lot from it. I think there are those people who post on Threads or on Blue Sky, you know, show me pictures of a sunset. Show me your favorite pictures of someone wearing red. And that's just engagement bait. And if you post your photo in there, you're not going to get any followers doing that. So, be smart. Think about where you want. You only have so much energy and so much time for this crap. So decide how you want to spend it,
Yeah, and don't be afraid of it.
and don't be afraid of it.
I think that's the key. You may even make friends.
I have.
Well, there you go. So, Bill, we've spoken a lot about social media. So, where can people find you on social media?
Well, Grant, I'm on Instagram mostly, and that's at Bill Shapiro, at my name. And like I said, most Fridays, um, I do a reported piece about a photographer that flies a little bit under the radar, but who I think is, fantastic. On Blue Sky, it's the same at Bill Shapiro. On Threads, same at Bill Shapiro, and
And
to be on YouTube, perhaps.
and that's a really, really good tip. Be the same on all platforms.
Right, right. Like, yeah, you don't want to be like the fat guy here and at Bill Shapiro there, and keep it consistent.
Yeah, exactly.
Same
And
on photo. Oh, if you do get onto the photo app, it's the same.
okay. And of course, we're at UN of Photo, absolutely everywhere. Listen, Bill, I thought that was rather enjoyable, and we even agreed. We didn't fall out too much.
I'm glad that you saw it my way, Grant. I appreciate that. No, thank you
Well,
for a great conversation.
oh, that's great. Listen, I hope the listener whose name I'm not very organized like Bill is. I haven't got the listener's name to hand. I do apologize, but I do hope you enjoyed what we said, and I hope we answered your questions. As always, Bill will be back next month, and the conversation will be continuing.
And to listeners out there, if you agree with us, if you disagree with us about social media, send us a note on social media. We'll respond.
Yeah, and please tell people who you think might be interested in what we're saying. If you're interested, let them know. Spread the word. That's always a good thing to be. Be social.
Thanks, Grant.
Okay, thanks, Bill. Take care.